sorry we're a little bit late this morning. It's been a bit of a full-on morning. It really has. I can see lots of you there are talking about Jamal Edwards.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, obviously we heard last night, and how shocked was I, Mark? I was just so...
It was like you'd been burnt.
I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
We kept hoping, obviously we were all WhatsApping each other, and we were all hoping that it was a mistake, that Twitter had got hold of something. It's so unbelievable that a 31-year-old man, right in his prime, doing so much with so much to do as well. I mean, all we keep saying to each other, all my mates that Loose Women and everybody, is just how is, whenever Brenda ever spoke about him, literally, that shine that a mother gets when they talk about their child, it's like, it's just unimaginable. It's just I just because it's not only that, he was a very, very, lots of you may not know Jamal Edwards, and I didn't. When Brenda first came on the show and I was chatting about Brenda, to the girls in the family, we've got this new Loose Women and blah blah blah. And then our daughters said, "Is she something to do with Jamal Edwards?" I said, "I don't know, because I didn't know who he was, but he's this massive."
Oh yeah.
He's been this massive presence for a certain generation that we just didn't know anything about. Obviously, since then, found out a lot about him and met him a couple of times. And honestly, it's like I said on my Instagram, all these incredible things he's done. But when you met him, he was such a sweet, kind man. And Maddie said to me yesterday, because he knew that she did music, she said, "Oh, Mum, he used to message me and give me words of encouragement." And I was like, God, I didn't even know that. He had time for people.
Well, he was a huge supporter. Just reading into his biography, obviously he was one of the first movers on YouTube. Apparently his mum and dad gave him a camera for just 20 quid. And he just started filming stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Brenda was
and he became sort of like a facilitator of numerous musical artists. He worked with Ed Sheeran.
Oh my God, Jessie J, Dave.
Exactly.
But also a lot of young musicians, and did a lot of work in his communities from West London. He did a lot of work with his community. Oh, that's a lovely...
I was just wanted to read it. Faith Goodman says that Jamal tweeted in 2012, "We all die. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will."
Well, he certainly did that.
And his channel, SBTV, is still churning out new artists, new talent, finding new talent, giving a platform to artists that otherwise wouldn't be able to get any publicity, And an interesting point that he said of himself, "I want to be the Banksy of facilitate music." He said, "I want to hire," and just from what you said of him and what I've seen of him in the press, you sense that he doesn't want to be right at the front, sort of like the star of the piece. He wants to be the facilitator.
I just met him a couple of times, and I think it was, a number of people were saying yesterday, he was just a very humble sort of person. I just cannot fathom how Brenda and her family.
Oh my God.
Okay, I just cannot fathom it.
God.
It's just absolute. It's beyond imaginable, isn't it, Mark? I mean, it's just like as a parent, or as anybody that's ever loved anybody, to lose somebody suddenly and just, oh God, at such a young age, he was doing so. I mean, he was an MBE, for God's sake, at 24 years old.
I know. I mean, that is phenomenal. I mean, he lived so many lives. I mean, he'd achieved so much. I mean, so much.
I think one of the first things he posted, the thing that went viral was a film that he did of Brenda, and she didn't know he was filming her. And sorry, I'll just turn my phone off.
Elliot Gonzalez says, "I worked with Jamal in 2012. Last spoke to him in December. The kindest, most generous soul, nice to everyone, wanted everyone to win."
Yeah, I mean, what a quality to want other people to win. And I think, his life seemed to be a life with purpose, didn't it? Yeah. Everything he's doing had purpose.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, to my mates at Loose Women, I've just been saying today, God, I just can't process it. It's so strange.
Yeah.
So what is it like for those people close to him?
It literally, words can't get close to it. I mean, you can't articulate it. Stacey 269, one of the few people who gave back not for any reason but to support young artists and people.
He really did, didn't he? Well, just that little thing that Maddie said is, oh, Mummy used to message me and give me really nice words of encouragement. I just thought, oh God, I didn't even know that. And when you think of how many people he was looking after and dealing with, and yet that's what everyone says about him. He had the time for everyone.
Yeah, Maybu, strange how it can affect feelings, made me cry all morning for poor Brenda. Every parent's nightmare.
I know.
I mean, you kind of reach into these moments empathetically, and you just think, oh my God, you know, you imagine it happening to you, and then it's like trying to imagine infinity. You just can't.
Yeah. I'm just, my heart is aching for everyone, and also for the show today. It's going to be a very difficult show for Loose Women to do, isn't it? I mean, I'm just so proud of them all, and I messaged the producers this morning and just like, oh my God. They've all got to really hold it together, and everybody on the show is really, really feeling this. It's like, you know, it's family, isn't it? It's just.
But also, I mean, looking at Brenda's comment, it's that terrible thing that when you're in the public eye, there's a sort of, this is the terrible part of it, there's an expectation that you say something. And in that expectation of saying something, you lose your privacy of grief. And for everyone around her, and this tragedy, it's the same thing. Everyone expects everyone to say something because it feels the right thing, and yet at the same time, there is nothing to say that sums it up. So I really feel for your colleagues on Loose Women, because the expectation will be for them to, in a sense,
People
summarise
want to be soothed,
Yeah,
don't they?
summarised and soothed, but none of it will come close to the actual core of where this has happened. And in a sense, you want to leave where it's happened with poor Brenda and her family, totally alone, without this sort of
But what I hope
discussion around
is
it.
that, like, I mean, every time I've turned the radio or put anything on, you're just hearing these amazing things about him. And, you know, I mean, often there is pressure, isn't there, to say good things about people when people pass. But this is genuine. This guy was a very special guy, gifted as a person, gifted, talented, and he lived his life with purpose. He lived his life wanting to create something, and that was a beautiful quote. Thank you, beautiful and sad, for showing us that faith. You know, the thing is not to live forever. What is it? The aim is not to live forever, but to leave something that lives on forever.
Yeah.
I mean, and to, you know,
And he has.
kindness, you know, and that he's like extreme kindness, isn't he? The way that he's facilitated so many people to be brilliant and to. Oh, it's the.
Julie Franks, life is so fragile and we all take it for granted.
It really is. We worry about all sorts of things, and yet the thing that we might not worry about, we don't even know what it is. So it's like, if anything, it's like, just treat today as best you can, treat others as best you can, treat yourself as best you can, and that's like, I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it.
Reese says, and as it comes to the black community, there's always this glass ceiling barrier that discourages potential, and he embodied breaking that
really
glass
did.
ceiling and crossing endless areas, leaving room.
He
What
did,
a way
and
to sum up.
even though, that beautifully put, Reese, and even though he, you know, was at the very top of his game, you know, very wealthy, mixing with the good and the great, you know, the VIP and all of that, he was always helping his community. He was always, I mean, I remember I was talking at one point about me maybe doing some cooking in cookery lessons and community centre. He was just constantly on what he was going to do next. It seems, I mean, listen, I don't know him well. In no way am I doing that thing on somebody's bar. But I'm saying of the moments and of what I've captured and of listening to Brenda and listening to my kids and listening, this was obviously a very special person, and it is utterly devastatingly sad, and I just keep going back to Brenda and thinking, how?
And in the same breath, last night we were liaising with Katie Fenton on Instagram, who tragically, Katie, all our love goes out to you. Katie Fenton lost her Jack. I think it was over the weekend.
Sorry, Kate.
And as you say, Katie says here, I can't process that my Jack has died. It's just incomprehensible. My heart goes out to Brenda. I don't know how I'll go on without Jack.
Well, Katie, thank you for sharing the news about Jack yesterday. When Mark read your message out to me yesterday, I was in bits, to be honest. It's just, we cannot imagine. And he went through so much. Katie's son, Jack, has been battling with cancer for a long, 19, I think, is he, Katie? And yeah, a day of such loss. Wow.
Yeah. So I think everyone should just spare a thought, and it's just to pause and take stock and think about what people are going through. So yeah, Katie, look, big hugs coming from everyone to you,
Big
Katie.
hugs, and thank you for your kind words about, Katie was saying how much this community gives her. She messaged us yesterday, and we really were so moved by that, and that means so much to us, that when we've had a lot of messages recently from people saying how, how this every morning is like a place for people to settle and have a moment with other people. So we really appreciate that, and what we always say is, you might or might not believe this, is just as important to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a pulse for us, this place. So yeah, it's a very special community, and we do feel incredibly blessed that we have it. And yeah, if anyone would like to reach out to Katie and give her a hug today, I think she could really do with that. And over the coming months, because of course, as we all know, because we've all lost people close to us, grief is a daily task to learn to live alongside it. It never really goes, but you learn to live alongside it, and you grow around it.
Yeah.
And my favourite quote, Mark doesn't like this quote, but I love it, from our own Queen, which is, grief is the price we pay for love. Mark finds it very difficult, that quote. You don't like it, but...
Well, no,
I do. I find real comfort in those words, somehow.
I don't know. I struggle with all words, to sum it up, because I mean, when I just even last night, I mean, with your message, Katie, and looking at the obituary that was happening for Jamal, I almost get that sort of anger, and I remember it happening with people that have died in my life, that we strive to sum them up, and in summing them up, you reduce them to something so insufficient. So nothing can sum them up. I understand the need, and I understand the compulsion to kind of, have some remembrance and to summarise the importance of their life. But in a way, for the person who's closest to that person who's gone, words may provide some comfort, but they don't come anywhere near close to the person themselves.
Do you know what I think it's about? I think as people that are around those that are grieving, maybe the words are to help soothe us as humans, because it's so unbearable, the thinking of, like Katie when she messages, it's so unbearable, and then poor Brenda and Brenda's family and friends, it's so unbearable that we need the words almost more than the person that's grieving is, because when you're not in a position to put your arms around somebody or to whatever, we need to express something. We have a primal need to help. We can do some sort of soothe in some way. And it is a tricky situation, because you never want to make things worse for people.
No, absolutely.
So hard, isn't it?
But that was the bit that was making me sort of frustrated as it was being summed up on the news. I was just thinking, how the hell? I just hope to God Brenda isn't seeing this, or there isn't, this idea that it becomes a news item.
I think there's also a lot of comfort in it, because people are saying so many wonderful things. Louise Pritchard, I'm so sorry, Louise just said that her brother, it was her younger brother's birthday yesterday, and he died a year ago, and it doesn't get any easier for you, and I'm just so sorry. Oh,
Neve, Ed, the term God always takes the best people first feels so true, whatever
Yeah.
your religion right now. Jamal, Jack, so devastating, but look at the impact they had and the love their families will have.
yeah. I have to say that sentence did come out of me yesterday, and it is so frustrating, isn't it, when good people die young? It's just,
Yeah.
it's the brutality and the cruelty of life that can make you very angry.
Yeah.
Because we can't understand it, we can't fathom it, you know.
Scott Christie Jones says there's a new stunning mural to Jamal in Acton. It's
Yes,
made of old
incredible,
keyboards
isn't it?
and keyboards and other musical kit. Seems it's a pilgrimage for many today. Ed Sheeran visited it just before Christmas.
Poor Ed Sheeran, I mean, they were very close, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, everyone. It's not just famous people, it's anyone.
Yeah.
And everyone, and all the young artists, or the kids from chaotic backgrounds that he was helping, or whatever. This is huge. This is really huge for so many people. And
Wonder Woman, everyone feels the need to make a tribute, which can seem
Yeah.
insincere to those who actually
yeah,
knew the
that's
person.
a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
there is a need, isn't there? And so that's why I love that quote so much. Grief is the price we pay for love, because I suppose it's trying to attach some meaning to the pain. Like if you really love somebody, there is the grief, and that's what's hard in the first days when you lose somebody and that shock is in and you're not feeling anything.
Yeah.
And you feel numb. You feel so numb. I always say it's the shock absorbers of the brain that are so powerful. They step in and they just give you a bit at time so that you can actually cope.
I think grief is a wound that never heals, and yet
Grow around it.
all we do is we spend our lives trying to, in a sense, avoid looking at it so closely. I mean, I know that if I go to the places of loss, it's as intense as it was at the time. You kind of hold it at arm's length. And every now and then it hijacks you. And you can't help that. It's someone just said, allow silence to sit when someone's grieving. Sometimes words help, but so too does just, reflective silence. So
I suppose it's the way in letting people know that you're there, but you don't. It can be difficult to manage, can't it? How to do the right thing for somebody, because the right thing can be the wrong thing for so many.
course,
And that's
of
why I think you're right. It's the silence, it's the, how.
Lee Peart, I can't bear to think the pain Brenda and
Lee.
his sister are going through. Very, very sad.
I know, Lee. I mean, we were messaging last night, weren't we? We just couldn't process it.
No.
And as you were saying last night, Lee, on the few occasions that you met him as well, nobody ever says anything other than, oh, he's so lovely, so engaged, so...
Lee says it's a fine line. You want to send your condolences and your love, but you don't want to intrude at
Yeah.
the same time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's managing the right time and the right way and the...
Reese, grief is like a heavy backpack. It doesn't get any lighter, but over time you get better at carrying it.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. Rita Williams, my parents' loss still to this day affects me massively as a grown woman. God bless you, Brenda.
Well, Mark's, your sort of Jim that
Yeah,
you say was
father
kind of
figure,
father
yeah.
figure. I mean, whenever we talk about Jim,
Oh, yeah.
and how long ago did you lose him?
25 years ago.
It's
26 years
as
ago.
raw, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
always get sad. It's very sad. You always say how you wished he'd met me and the girls.
Yeah.
And I suppose the difficult thing is, it's why sometimes it's hard to let go of grief, because you feel like you're letting go of the person and that you're not, a lot of people have the guilt, don't they, if they have a good day or a good moment or a good...
Yeah, or if life moves on in any capacity,
Yeah.
it's that thing of it, just things moving on. It's, whoa, you want the conveyor belt of life to stop. Not because you want everyone to feel what you're feeling, you just want it to stop, just temporarily, just for a moment, because it seems so brutal as it sort of carries on.
It's just... Yeah, so many messages going up there of people saying how they just, having lost their parents, and people also saying this, they haven't lost anyone yet close to them, and it's terrifying, and yeah, it's the only certainty in life, isn't it? the only absolute certainty, and that's very, very scary. And I think, you know, one of my friends yesterday, I was like, I just can't believe how difficult I'm finding this to process. Because, I mean, the way it works, because I do the end of the week, we all have our parts of the week, so I don't do loads and loads of shows with Brenda. But it's like this friend of mine was saying yesterday, the intensity that we all have on the show because of those meetings before, you get to know people a lot quicker. And it's intense. You know, the whole family of Loose Women is feeling this incredibly keenly. Everybody is everybody is reeling. It's just...
Well, it's like that analogy of addiction where, you know, it's a drop in a pond and it's the ripple effects. And those ripple effects impact on so many people who aren't necessarily that close to the person, but can feel the ripple in someone else who was closer.
And she's had so much to bear already. Nobody should have to go through this much grief. It's just too much. It's just, you know what? It's all right to say it's just not fair. It's not fair, is it? I almost feel like we can't talk about anything
It feels
else.
a bit trite going on about the news and all that sort of stuff. It feels like a moment
Lovely
to...
things that people are writing.
Yeah.
Francesca Bastos, girl, grief is such a mystery. I lost my best friend 2 years ago to suicide, and I still have days and exactly as shocked as in the beginning. It's devastating that he's not here anymore. We hear you. You know, both Mark and I, unfortunately, have had experience of that too, and it is so shocking. Though I do, you know, to lose somebody suddenly, it's so shocking. Though, as you always say, Mark, even if somebody's had a long illness, whatever, there is a point where the light goes out.
It's always sudden.
And that is so final, and therefore it's always sudden. And I get what you mean when you say that. It's always sudden.
It's always sudden.
Because suddenly they've gone and they've gone forever.
I mean, I remember that even with my nan. She was clearly unconscious for 3 days, but the moment they go is there's no amount of sort of slow landing. There's no, you know, gradient that kind of means that it's less intense when it happens. Because when it happens, and that's it. It's always sudden, the emotional impact.
I mean, I suppose, and you know, I've talked to a lot of people over the years that have lost people that have had a long illness or a lot of pain, and there is obviously the shock, still the shock, and the sudden sadness and the sudden grief, but the comfort also that person doesn't suffer, because that is just... So that's a whole nother, you know, there is no better way to lose somebody. That's what I would say. These conversations always come up with human beings, doesn't there? Oh, I'd prefer to know, or I'd prefer this, or I'd prefer that. I just think when it happens, there's always a different way you'd prefer it to happen, because actually you just didn't want it to happen.
Absolutely.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Totally. Clodagh Egan, my cousin, died when she was 32. She was gorgeous in every way. There was a year between us. I think of her every day. Faith Goodman, it's losing a child rather than a parent that is so awful.
Oh, God.
You can't even begin to imagine. Helen Fatherley, you just miss them. Anything you feel is okay to feel. There are no wrong or right feelings.
Exactly.
Katie Fenton, bless you, darling. I keep thinking they'll ring and say they have a new plan, a new drug. We're staying at the hospital in Birmingham. I can't leave him here and go back to Shrewsbury.
Sweetheart.
Sweetheart, yeah. Francesca Bastos, in our case, it wasn't really a surprise. We knew he was doing very badly. We ran to his house many times during the night. He constantly cried, asking everyone how he could get better, but still a shock. Sorry, I've missed your first.
No, this is Francesca who lost her friend to suicide.
Yeah.
Oh, God, Francesca.
So sorry.
So sorry. So sad.
Oh.
So sad.
Laura Barclay, there's an aching void that comes with grief, a silence. Yeah, it's also the physicality of someone, isn't it?
And for, you know, and for Katie, who we've known that, you know, you've been in this torturous situation for a very long time, haven't you, with Jack? And just that, it is going to be a big thing for you to adjust, isn't it? To adjust to that daily caring and worrying and, GX
String, I knew my husband was dying, but I never expected him to actually die. Yeah, I know
That's
what you mean.
that's what Mark says
And
about
I've
that
felt
light
that's-
suddenly going out.
And I felt the same way with my stepdad, auntie, and best friend. All of them had terminal cancer. There's no gentle settling. There's no, slow release. There's no. It doesn't make the emotions
light goes
any.
out, as
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said.
yeah. It's Jackie Noakes. We lost both my brothers. My mum has never been the same. All her hair fell out. Never grew back. Sending so much love to Brenda and her family. So yeah, should this be so public, Danielle Abitan? Well, that's what I was. If you go back to earlier in the piece, I was talking about that. I was talking about how there's this terrible dichotomy between being in the public realm, and so people expect there to be some acknowledgement or mention of it in some capacity. And in a sense, sadly, people will draw negative conclusions from people who don't say something. And then in saying something, there's a fear that there's an act of disrespect of some form. So it's a bit of a
I
difficult
think when
one.
you've lived a public life, there is always going to be your passing will always be public. I think from the people that I've known in my life that have lost people that aren't in the public eye, I've always noticed this thing that people say, "Oh, tell me good things about, tell me experiences of them." And so actually, when I've been listening today to the things about Jamal, I've been thinking this must be so lovely to hear all this positivity, all these lovely, lovely things. And Katie, you know, our follower here who just recently lost her son. I'm sure for you, Katie, it's a salve to hear the lovely things about your son.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just saying in your message to us yesterday that he liked it when you were watching Coffee Moaning, and that you'd have a laugh and you'd have a rant, and he sounded like he was so sweet and thinking of you as well, and knowing what you were, the support you were giving him, and that's important,
Yeah.
isn't it, to hear the good stuff about a person.
Sasha Dodds, no parent should ever outlive their child. I lost my son, he died on my birthday.
Oh,
The pain is real and raw.
sweetheart.
My heart breaks for Brenda. So many people. I mean, and of course, the sad reality of this is it touches everyone's lives.
So he says, comforting words about the person you've lost always helps in a big way. I think so. I think so.
Oh, God. Guys. Well,
I know it can be, when somebody in the public eye passes, I know it can be very triggering for people. I've had a couple of conversations with friends today who have been taken back to scary or sad places. So I suppose the thing to do is, like, as grief rises, when you hear about other people's loss, it does bring up your loss in life. And it's okay to sit with those feelings and feel them and remember people and maybe have a cry. And I think that's human. And I think it's brought up something for everybody that I've spoken to today and yesterday, and for you
it
and
really
people
has.
that did or didn't know
Yeah.
them. And and I'm just sending all my love to Katie, to Brenda, to your family, to your friends, to anybody that's lost anybody. It's one of the biggest challenges of life, is death, isn't it? It really is.
So hold those who are dearest to you. You take stock. Take a minute just to
And
reflect.
take a minute to feel the pain.
Yeah,
if it's taking you back to somebody that you lost, it's kind of okay, isn't it? That's life.
Should we end with a minute silence for Katie?
Let's, for Katie,
and Brenda?
for Brenda's son. Let's just, and for the people that any of us have
Any
lost.
of us,
let's
all of you,
just- yeah.
all of you that have shared.
Yeah.
And to end with Sophie Clemetshaw, rest in paradise, Jack and Jamal.
Yeah. Lots of love, Katie.
Lots of love.